Hey everyone, Lance here. This has been a long time coming, but this is a continuation of my last build update video, and anyone that watched that will know that I kind of had some problems with the tubing. I bought acrylic instead of PETG. I know some people argue both ways, but I prefer PETG, and then I also ran out of tubing. So I wanted to get in. The system has been running fine by the way, but I wanted to get in and sort of fix the little niggly bits and sort out the problems I was facing. Now I have also been thinking lately that I'm trying to move too quick with my experience with water cooling. I sort of went from a soft loop tube, and a few months later went to my first hard loop build, and I've always had slight issues, so I'm wanting to sort of simplify my loop a tiny bit by using sort of different fittings rather than going for more bends, just till I get more experience with the whole water cooling stuff. Anyone that's been following my water cooling experience will know that I've had not one but two leaks in a very short amount of time. Now the last one was mostly my fault, so was the first one, but the last one was because that top piece of tubing had a slight sag in it. Anyway, since the last update I did, I've done a little bit more digging to find out why, and I'm finding that that bend, because it is so tight, isn't completely 90 degrees. So because the loop got hot, and I'll come back to why soon, because the loop got hot, it was trying to bend some sort of more of its natural curve, which was ever so slightly less than 90 degrees, and it caused this bit to bow in the middle. That bit of tubing was also slightly too short, so the tube wasn't seated correctly in the rubber seals. So what I'm thinking of doing is using an angled fitting. Monitor's just gone off there. Using an angled fitting and just a straight piece of tube across to see how it works, sits, and see if it gets hot, if it's going to bow in the middle again. And I'll get to that hurdle if it ever arrives. Now what I also noticed was that before the last leak, I was playing around in SpeedFan, and when I started up the computer, the fans weren't running at all, so I think I've messed up the fan curves quite a bit, so the fans weren't powering on. Now the reason I was messing around in SpeedFan is because these two Corsair fans in the top of the case, I think, have failed. They're very loud, and they make a loud creaking sound as soon as they spin up more than a very small amount. Now I found that if they're sitting vertical, that goes away. It's only when they're sitting horizontal. So I've got some new fans, and I'll come to that in a second, but that is why the system got so hot, was because I was trying to get those fans quieter, and it just wasn't happening until they were completely off. So I know not to make that mistake again, and hopefully the issues I've been facing with the tubing will also be addressed. Now, of course, along with this, I've got some new parts to go in the system. So I've bought some more coolant. This is the Mayhem's Pastel, what's the flavour, is Ice White. Now in here, because it did leak, all I've done is topped it up with distilled water. So this is a slightly off-white colour, and it's not completely opaque. It's slightly translucent, and in its own right, it does look quite good, but I prefer the solid colour, and you get that full white colour. I've also got a dual rotary Bits Power fitting here in black. I was trying to get a silver one, but I could only find EK ones, and the shipping was going to take longer than I wanted to wait, so I got a black Bits Power one. And then I've got one of these 90 degree fittings here, so I'm hoping that will do. And then I've got a spacer here as well, because in the last video I used a different fitting and it wasn't quite long enough to fit past that fan. I've also got 2 packs of PETG tubing from EK Water Blocks, and here I've got some new fans. Now I didn't want to get rid of the coloured fan design with that white ring that the Corsair fans offer, but then I came across these, and these are Thermaltake Ring 12s. So there's 3 fans in here and a fan controller. They'll be going in. Now what I like about these is they have an LED ring around the fan. So that will give me that same effect that the plastic ring on those Corsair fans gives. And also, if I ever change the colour of my build, it's just a couple of button presses to change the colour. So I quite like the idea of that, and we'll see how these go. but I'm quite excited to try out these new fans, and hopefully they're nice and quiet. And of course, last but not least, some people will know that my CPU block, when I took it apart to clean it, I over-tightened the screws and the block got cracked. Now I've got a replacement one from EK here. This replacement one doesn't have the EK logo, so I'll have to swap that from my current block. But actually over time, using the system, the cracks in the water block are getting worse and worse, and they're actually almost to the coolant. So I'll show you guys that up close once it's all off, but that might be interesting to see as well. For anyone that hasn't seen it already, we can see about here there's a slight bow, and if you look closely, look how tight that bend is. So I don't believe that that is a complete 90-degree bend by the time it's going into here, so it's trying to naturally sort of straighten out down, and that's what's bowing it in towards there. Now if we focus on that block, we can see here that there's sort of extra colouring. Shouldn't put my hand in the fan, just to note, there's some extra colouring around those circles. If you look here, it's almost to the coolant, and on that outer edge, it's very, very close to the edge of that plastic. So it's really not ideal. I'm also going to redo this tubing, because this tubing is acrylic. And down here, I want to redo that tubing there, because that tubing in behind this corner is all crumpled. It was hidden away. I didn't think it would bother me, but it has been bothering me. You may notice that this is a different fitting to one I showed in the beginning. Now the one I showed in the beginning, that 90-degree one, didn't have enough bend, so I've used the one that was in the back right there. Now you can see I'll need to lengthen that tube slightly, but it gives it just enough clearance to get around the fan, and I think looks tidier in that front piece than it does in that rear piece, and it means I can go straight across into that front radiator. You can also see that I've put a spacer there and on the other one. That was just to get that spacing perfect on both of those. It doesn't look too bad, doesn't look the greatest, but it is hidden when the front panel is on the case. Down here I've put that black Bits Power fitting, and I think it hides away quite nicely with that black terminal block and that black backplate from the GPU. So that is just going to come straight across and straight into the reservoir. I will need to lower the reservoir a bit, so I'll need to shorten that other piece of tubing going down into the pump. And this is the old piece of tubing, if I can get it to focus. Alright, so there is that piece of tubing, and you can see that ugliness I've hidden behind that bend. There is a kink there. I was getting short on tubing, didn't want to have to redo it when I originally did the white build. I got the CPU block off, and here you can see the cracking, and you can see how bad it is in that top right corner. If you look at this tubing, you can really see how much it's bent, so just trying to sit it flat on the table, you can see there's a huge curvature. I mean, I can even let it go and you can see it doesn't even want to sit flat. With that block off, you can see the cracks from the underside. It's pretty bad. And then the new block that I got, or block top I should say that I got, it looks nice and new, very shiny. I've swapped the EK logo from the old one. It got a little bit scratched taking it off, but it doesn't bother me too much. Also some thermal paste to put this back on, and of course I cleaned the CPU with some isopropyl alcohol as well. I'm currently editing the video and I've found that some of the footage I filmed, I forgot to turn my mic on. I've been using a new mic and it's a powered mic, so I've lost the audio for some of my previous footage. So I just wanted to refilm a couple of small things. And I wanted to show you my fan configuration here. Now I've also lost the audio for the footage where I unboxed those fans. But basically this is the little fan hub. It comes with a Velcro patch to stick it down. And these are also 5-pin fans. So I don't know if you'd be able to run those off a motherboard. But because I have this, I've been able to decommission the Phanteks fan hub that comes with the case, which means I was able to get rid of some cabling. So this is a SATA power connector for the power supply, and all that was running off that was the Phanteks fan hub. That's gone, and also the wires for that Phanteks fan hub. I'd also want to say that the little 3mm LEDs for the CPU block, they're so brittle I accidentally broke them when I was putting them back into the CPU block. I've got some more on the way, but they won't make it for this video. They should hopefully be in soon though. And I got the old Corsair fans out, and I actually tried to make a warranty claim on these. I contacted the company I bought them from and found that they're actually over 2 years old. So I had a decent run out of them. I mean, I'm not too sure how long CPU case fans should last, but they're unbearably loud, especially now after using that system and hearing those new Thermaltake fans. I also wanted to apologise, as some of the footage I lost was me explaining the bends in the tubing that I was doing along the way. Of course I can't show that now because they're done and the loop is filled, but I do apologise if there's sort of a lack of explanation with some of the bends and the tubing and why I've done it. That last bit of tubing is in there now, as you can see. Now I'm quite happy with it. It's better than before, but still not perfect. But I'm not going to redo it. I'm happy with how it came out. And that used basically all that tubing I had. So tomorrow I'm going to fill the loop with distilled water, run it for a couple of hours, all going according to plan. I'm then going to put in that coolant. That's that Mayhem's Ice White I showed you guys earlier. Another little side note is that these Thermaltake fans on both sides have a few coloured wires. It would have been nice for them to make those black because they are a little bit annoying to see. They're on both sides, I guess to keep the colour of the LEDs consistent. Who knows, that's what I'm assuming it's for. But they are on both sides, so you couldn't really hide them away. So if they were black or even routed differently through the fan, that would have been nice. But I've got my 10 litres of pure dew distilled water here, and I've put some into this Pyrex jug. So I'm going to go ahead and fill the loop. I've jumped the 24 pin on the power supply, and I also have a little funnel that I put directly into the reservoir. So let's get to filling. So I've just filled it with distilled water, and so far so good. There's no leaks. It has watered down that coolant even more, so it's even more transparent. But of course I'm going to have that solid opaque coolant in there soon. So I'm going to leave this for a few hours. If it doesn't leak, perfect. I'll drain this all out, and then I'm going to put the coolant in, put everything back together, and I should be good to go. I've had the pump running for the last couple of hours and there's been absolutely no leaks. So I'm ready to drain the loop and now mix the coolant and fill it. Alright, so I've drained as much of the loop as I can. There is still a little bit because, like I said earlier, I do have a little bit of trouble getting air into the radiator to replace the coolant. Here I've got some of the coolant mixed, that Mayhem's Ice White I showed you at the start of the video. So I've halved the ratio, so this bottle is 250 mils and you're meant to mix it with 750 mils of distilled water. I've put 125 milliliters of the coolant with half of 750 mils. I think that's 375. I haven't done the math, but I'm going to put that in, and if I need the rest I'll mix some more. But that's a nice solid opaque colour, exactly like milk, which is exactly what I was after. What I've decided to do at this point is, because there was some distilled water in the loop, to make up for that, instead of filling this to the half a litre mark, I've filled it to the 450 milliliter mark. So the coolant is a little bit more concentrated, and that will make up for the extra distilled water in the loop that I wasn't able to completely drain out. There we have it, it's all done, and you can see that white opaque coolant in there. You can see it's all running issue free. You can see those LEDs on those fans, which I think look really nice. These fans are also way quieter than those Corsair fans. The system is running so quiet. I also really like the bends that I've done. I got to improve on the previous ones I'd made, and I think these ones look far nicer. So overall, I'm really happy with it all. I still want to paint those ram coolers white to get rid of that ugly red section there that doesn't go with the rest of the build, but that will be coming soon. I got to get rid of this as well. That's that curved piece of tubing and the cracked block top, which I'm really happy about. For anyone curious, those fans are controlled just by pressing the 3 buttons on the little fan controller. I don't know if there's software. I just cycled between the buttons until I got what I wanted, which was just the solid white LED. It's about all I wanted to say. I really hope I don't get known as the guy whose water cooling loop always leaks, but if anything, I hope it gives you guys confidence that if something does go wrong and it leaks, it's fixable. Your components aren't going to be damaged if the coolant gets on them, as long as you take your time and take care, use the right coolants, use distilled water. You should be fine if you do have a leak. I've had 2 leaks, no problems at all. I even occasionally get a little bit of water on things when I'm doing my upgrades, and as long as I clean it off, let it dry out completely, clean it off with isopropyl alcohol and compressed air, I've never had any problems, and I hope you guys don't either. But hey, that's all I really wanted to say in this video, guys. I do thank you all a lot for watching, and hey, I'll see you in the next one.